For those of you that love talking about animals, from Sci News, new Ankylosaur discovered in New Mexico. Canadian and U.S. paleontologists have announced the discovery of a new genus and species of Ankylosaur dinosaur, Zyapelta sanwahensis. And now, from prehistoric to present, my name is Ethan. Welcome to Creature Guide Live Prehistoric News. We are going over older articles recently to help everybody catch up, and many times even myself. So let's get back right into it. This Ankylosaur, it's definitely very peculiar in the look of this group of dinosaurs. The problem is with this image is that it has a very skinny tail, and to withstand the heavy weight of the tail club, in this instance, it would have a very hard time maintaining it off the ground. So everything would just drop. Uh, anyway, let's keep going. Ankylosauridae, Ankylosaurs, and Ankylosaurids is a family of plant-eating dinosaurs with armored plates on their back. Technically, there were quite a few relatives. Even the stegosaurs, you could give that characteristic. In fact, plates tend to be only referred to when talking about the stegosaur family. Now, the ankylosaurs and stegosaurs did derive from the eutherians earlier in the Jurassic, but I've rarely heard of ankylosaurs having plates. It's just a stegosaur trait. Ankylosaurs lived in what is now Western North America, Europe, and East Asia between 122 and 66 million years ago. Ankylosaurs might have existed much further back in the Cretaceous. The Nodosaurs, for sure. I mean, back into the Jurassic period. So over 145 million years ago. They were not only armored, but were also heavily armed. They often had shoulder spikes and large bony clubs at the end of their tails. Shoulder spikes were more of a characteristic that you would see on certain species of nodosaurs. Certain ankylosaurs would have had spikes, but they were far past the shoulder blades of the animal. So it's more of a nodosaur characteristic. The closest family of dinosaurs to the ankylosaurs. Large bony clubs at the end of their tails. That's specifically a ankylosaur characteristic. The newly discovered ankylosaur, named Zyapeltas and wahensis, roamed what is today New Mexico during the so-called Kirtlandian land vertebrate faunal age, somewhere between 74.8 to 72.8 million years ago. Okay, so this is during the late Campanian stage to the beginning of the Maastrichtian stage of the Cretaceous. So let's take a look at some other creatures. This is a species of nodosaur from the early Cretaceous of Wyoming, Montana. This is Sauropelta, which is very well known for its distinct elongated spikes protruding from its shoulder blade. And then you have much smaller spikes towards the sides of its neck. Now,
You think he was always smiling?
the nodosaurs always have this cheerful of a look, or it's almost like a dumb, cheerful look. They weren't the smartest of animals, and Ankylosaurs, this even the Stegosaurs, but Nodosaurs too, didn't have the largest brains, but they managed to survive for over 70 million years, so they did quite well. They
Maybe they
had,
just went through life happy.
it seems that way. Now they're also, heavily armored, so predators, at least when they reached full size, weren't usually that much of a problem. However, this animal could reach somewhere around 15 feet in length, but weigh over 2 tons. And the reason why that's so impressive is because Sauropelta specifically didn't reach much more than 3 to 4 feet in height. So it's just that much weight in that short of an animal.
Yeah, he's even smiling.
Yeah, the Nodosaurs were quite a cheerful group. They weren't very quick, though, but they weren't evolved to be agile animals. These creatures could probably reach speeds of maybe 8 miles an hour, be pushing it. They had very short ankle and shin and ankle bones compared to their body size. Actually, when looking at their ankles, sometimes when you're looking at the skeletons, it's very hard to tell that they had an ankle. It was so short, and that is horrible for something to have a substantial amount of speed. You barely have an ankle, you're going to be almost just a walker, and also a long thigh compared to the shin bone. Anyway, um, But definitely the spikes on the end of their tail, despite them in some cases looking quite dull, they would have been more than capable of severing any of the large carnivores in the region. So Arpelta had to deal with certain large species of Carcharodontosaur that inhabit North America around 110 million years ago. So let's head back to the article. Mainly Acrocanthosaurus. Let's see. Its fossilized skull and bones were uncovered from the Kirtland Formation at Hunter Wash San Juan Basin in northwestern New Mexico in 2011. Oh, so this has already been found some time beforehand. This happens with many fossils. And there's the top of the head. Wow. If you look at all of that design, that is very much intact. Even the horns to the outskirts.
He's got a big nose.
Yeah, he does. Yeah, I'd say that some of the best parts of the brain or the largest areas are sense of smell to an extent with some ankylosaurs. But they definitely had very large nostrils. Yeah, there it is. Interesting. And some instances, they're almost like the pigs of the Cretaceous, but they didn't have tusks and definitely much more heavily armored. There are some cases where it looks like even their eyelids, to an extent, might have been armored. Looking at the skin impressions, so that's how robust they were. An analysis of the fossils showed that Zyapelta sanwahensis stands out from other ankylosaurs because of unusually tall spikes on the cervical half ring, a structure like a yoke of bone sitting over the neck. The skull also differentiates it from other known ankylosaurs. It is interesting they gave it that name Zyapelta because, like Sauropelta, you just tend to think of that ending as a nodosaur, and in reality, this is specifically an ankylosaur that we're dealing with. So, looking at another animal, this is from much earlier in the Mesozoic era. This is somewhere around 189 million years ago in Zimbabwe, Africa. So, just north of um, Botswana, which is north of South Africa. Anyway, this is Volcanodon, which is one of the first primitive sauropods to exist. Now, many tend to associate the sauropod family with beginning somewhere around 175 to 180 million years ago with the Macronenian sauropods such as Diplodocus, which is true for that group. The problem is that beforehand you already had different species of sauropods evolving for about 20 million years. Primitive sauropods started evolving around 200 million years ago at the beginning of the Jurassic.
His face doesn't look like a sauropod.
Volcanodon did have more of a sauropodomorph, or you could even say prosauropod look. So, yes, that is very true. This is something that you would see on certain species of Plateosaur, maybe Ankylosaurus or Massospondylus from different regions of the world.
I was actually thinking it looks like a raptor.
Oh, yeah, that is true. Or even certain terror birds to an extent.
Maybe it's the eyes they gave him?
The whole structure of the skull in general. Now, where they place the nostril, this is odd. This is like back in the 19 what 60s, and this should be much further along the snout. This is like Brachiosaurus issues. The feet seem to be okay though. They gave it one thumb claw. I believe it still
Wait, wait.
looked like this with early sauropods.
Pull up the baby to the right.
Oh, him. He just looks hungry.
It just feels like he looks different than the one on the left, but maybe it just has that,
This one just looks more cheerful. He looks a bit confused. Anyway. Oh, okay. So yeah, this is around 189 million years ago, over in Zimbabwe. They were probably roaming different parts of Mozambique as well. They might have had to deal with different later relatives of the Coelophysin lineage, as well as even possibly members of the Dilophosaur lineage of carnivores. So Volcanodon could reach somewhere around 35 feet in length, or pushing 11 meters, and probably weighs somewhere around 6 to 7 tons. So it wasn't one of the largest sauropods at this point. There were certain larger individuals, but he was up there for the early Jurassic. Now let's head back to the article. The horns on the back of the skull are thick and curved downwards, and the snouts, that is interesting. That's not something you tend to hear when it comes to the horns on the back of an ankylosaur. So there's usually like two pairs, and they tend to just stick out to the side and usually pointed up somewhat, more of in a diagonal direction, but downwards is unique. And the snout has a mixture of flat and bumpy scales, an unusual feature for an ankylosaur. There's also a distinctive large triangular scale on the snout, where many other ankylosaurs have a hexagonal scale. Snout. Hmm. Trying to think of what that might be referring to. Zyapelta sanwahensis also shares several features with North American ankylosaurids, Ankylosaurus and Odontosaurus, Euoplocephalus, and Scolosaurus. Oh, yeah, it does. I mean, all four of these animals, you can say, when looking at the distinct armor of this individual, they do share very similar characteristics. Okay, I can see what they mean by the curved horns. Yeah, that's almost looks like a dog, but yeah, they're just curved. I just meant like the lappy ears.
Does it
Um,
sometimes seem like they just cut these articles off?
yeah, it does. It's like just cut short. But this type of spiked armor to the side on this ankylosaur is not very common. This is more of a nodosaur trait, and even for the nodosaurs, the longer spikes tend to be in some cases towards the front. This animal decided to put its adaptations or just spikes over towards its thigh and even the beginning of its tail, and then cut it off. That's very interesting. And then even spikes towards the
Potentially
back.
protecting its tail club area, so something isn't trying to bite down on it there?
Yeah. I mean, still is heavily armored over here, just smaller spikes. Now, taking a look at another creature, this animal is not mentioned very much despite it being around for some time. It was discovered back in 1979 over in China. This is Schwanhanosaurus. Now, a reason it's not mentioned too much.
Sounds like a dinner.
Yeah, he does. Um, yeah, what's a Mongolian beef? Anyway, they're Mongolian Protoceratops. Anyway, this Protoceratops was way after this carnivore, though. This was around 166 million years ago in China. So this was during the Middle Jurassic. So at this time, you had Eustreptospondylus over in England, a wide range of sauropods, many ichthyosaurs in the ocean. Anyway, there has been a huge debate as to what specific family of carnivore this animal belonged to. Schwannosaurus originally, when it was found, so during the 80s, 90s, was thought to be a member of Megalosauridae, so along with Megalosaurus. Then that went up for debate in 2009. It was referred to as a member of the Megalosauroideae lineage, which is nothing really too specific. Could just be some lineage of Megalosauridae. It's a large branch of theropod. Then a little bit later, it might have been the next year, I believe it was put into the Metrocanthosaur lineage. So along with animals such as Metrocanthosaurus. And then back in 2019, they decided that this individual might have been a member of some Ceratosaurian lineage, which is still not specific. But I mean,
Why is he feathered all over the place?
uh, well, this. Oh, well, there he's okay. Um, it's okay. So this animal, it wasn't very large. I just thought I mentioned the size real quick because feathers tend to be portrayed on theropods that are of smaller size. But this was around 12 to 15 feet in length, but didn't weigh much more than 5 to 600 pounds, or a little over
Oh, he's
uh,
been depicted much larger.
250 kilograms. Um, y- oh yeah, here he looks much larger. It is a heavily built Ceratosaurian, so it's yeah. I mean, here he definitely looks quite muscular. I'd say for 166 million years ago, this was before many members of the Allosaur lineage had evolved. He's quite heavily built. He's not the largest carnivore to exist, though. Believe even Eustreptospondylus would have become larger. Here, he actually looks a little more like a Eustreptospondylus. But for the time, at least in Middle Jurassic China, you would have had maybe smaller species of sauropod, or at least younger individuals he would have fed on. So far, we don't know whether or not this animal might have hunted in packs. So, let me know what your favorite species of armored dinosaur is. And from prehistoric to present, my name is Ethan. This is Creature Guide Live Daily News. Remember to like, comment, subscribe if you love talking about animals, and share this show with everyone you know because nothing is better than all animals all the time.